Hi there. Great to see you, Russ. I think it's great to have you here with us today. And I just wanted to kick off our Activate AI showcase and discuss with you your kind of perceptions on it coming from the global tech advocates and your experience. So, Russ, particularly, you've got a front row seat in what's happening in the tech world in tech around the world. So, when you look at AI right now, what's the headline and what's really going on out there?
Sure. Thank you, Claire. Thank you for having me. And, congratulations with all that you and Mary are doing with this Awaken AI initiative. Really, really key. I'm actually in Birmingham at an AI summit talking about and addressing these same questions. And I share that because, AI is on everybody's mind at the moment. We hear the big headlines about all of the money that's going in to build all the data centers, the investment that's being plowed into facilities all around the world. But I think in parallel, people are trying to come to grips with what AI can do, not just from a cost-cutting perspective, not just from a productivity perspective, but also from a how do I truly transform my business using AI? So there's all kinds of conversations happening, but it's also at various stages of advancement. Some at the very beginning, some now talking about how do they use agentic AI in their businesses. It goes across the spectrum. So I think that's also creating a lot of confusion. And I hope through this session we can try and maybe demystify it. Part of what I try and do is to demystify what's going on, what do you need to be worried about, what don't you need to be worried about. So that's kind of my message to folks when I see people around the world.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about what's going on in the US and China and that they're racing ahead. India's going all in countries like Nigeria and Indonesia, trying to leapfrog. What are they actually doing that places in places like Northern Ireland should sit up and take notice?
Yeah, I think it's important that for folks in Northern Ireland, first of all, observe what's going on. Be knowledgeable about where is the US going, where is China going. You don't have to do it to any great degree, but the US is going more towards a closed source approach to AI. China's adopting an open source approach. That's going to have an impact on the cost of how we deploy AI. But they are both racing ahead. They perceive themselves as the leader in AI, and we should be familiar with what they're doing. I was in Nigeria last September. I was in Indonesia just last month. And in places like that, they're also coming to grips with it. They know that they're a bit behind the curve and they're trying to figure out how do they not only digitalize their economies, but how do they use AI to kind of leapfrog and catch up to where the US, China, and the UK are. So from the folks in the room there, it's just having a deeper understanding of the geopolitics behind this because the technology is fascinating, but there is also a bit of a geopolitical landscape that I say to people, you just need to be mindful that this is happening, be aware of it, and think about what it means when you're on the ground running your business.
And then bringing that closer to home, just as you discuss that, where does, in your opinion, the UK honestly sit in the global AI race right now?
I think we're in a really good position. I actually think we are the third hub for AI globally after the US and China. We have this AI action plan. We've seen, tens of billions of pounds of investment coming into the UK. You've got OpenAI and Salesforce and Microsoft all setting up their global hubs here, which to me is a real, vote of confidence that what we're doing is right, that we have great AI companies that we're building here, and others outside of the UK want to invest in what we're doing. Part of our challenge now in working with government and private investors is how do we get more of our own domestic investment, our own domestic capital behind businesses up and down the UK, including Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and you've just mentioned we have the AI action plan, the
Mm.
Tech First, which is aimed to train 7.5 million people, the Tech Prosperity Plan, with big AI infrastructure money. If I'm running a small business in Northern Ireland, so for those in the audience today, why should I care about any of that? What's in it for me?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I think, for example, maybe starting with tech first. This is not just the government, but the private sector funding a lot of courses, a lot of free courses to train 7.5 million British adults on AI and digital, which I think is really important. So for the folks there, getting access to free training is key, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that. The Tech Prosperity Plan, a lot of money coming into the UK, and again, we're going to talk about this. It's important for businesses in Northern Ireland to show up and be part of that, to make some noise and say, look, we're here, we're building great AI businesses. We want to get access to that investment and to that funding. And then the AI Action Plan is just a good umbrella that the Prime Minister launched just over a year ago that talks about, I think it's 50 different actions that the government is thinking about, but how will that impact us? There are components of it that we need to think about. So again, be familiar with it, understand in the backdrop that there's a lot of this activity happening, and there will be ways for you to tap into some of that.
And then you talked about, you called the UK a proper global hub for AI,
Yeah.
with DeepMind kicking things off and Microsoft, Salesforce, OpenAI all piling in. What does that concentration of AI firepower unlock for smaller regions, particularly Northern Ireland?
Yeah, I think many of these companies are coming here, they're setting up here, and they're saying, where can I go? Where can I put my investment? Where is there great talent? Where are there interesting companies that are emerging where I know that there's some good AI leadership? Where are the universities? I want to be parked near a university that's really focusing on AI and associated fields. Maybe it's cyber, maybe it's quantum computing, etc. And so that firepower certainly is beneficial to regions like Northern Ireland. Again, if there's engagement from people on the ground, from startups and scale-ups and small businesses in Northern Ireland who are putting their hand up saying, hey, we're here, we're doing this, we'd like some of that, please, and come over and take a look at what we're doing.
Yeah, so keeping that focus on Northern Ireland, when you look at NI from the outside, what makes you think there's real AI potential here?
Yeah, I mean, I traveled to so many different hubs around the world, and I know I was with you and Mary. I think it was about a year and a half ago, and I walked away with a great impression. First and foremost, it's the talent that's on the ground there, the entrepreneurs who are building great businesses, the pools of investors, the ideas and the innovation that's emerging is one. Two, you've got some really good startups emerging in the AI space. You've got some great universities there. Those are the ingredients that can help unlock that AI potential. And I think, the calling card, if you will, that you've got up your sleeve in Northern Ireland is you've got the best of both worlds. You're part of the UK and you're part of the European Union. And when I was there, it really struck me how that is a great advantage. So not only is that UK investment at your doorstep, but the EU is investing heavily into AI as well. And can you use that to your advantage would be something that I would put on the table as well.
Yeah, so kind of building on that in terms of a pitch, we have strong universities here. We've got Ulster University, we've got
Mm.
Queen's, we've got the AI Collaboration Centre, the AICC. We have the regional colleges, and especially here in Derry, particularly today, we've got the Northwest Regional College, and they're doing lots in terms of training their young people around AI. And over kind of 100 AI related firms in Northern Ireland, like Napier, Kainos. If you were explaining Northern Ireland's AI story to someone in London or San Francisco, or I
Yeah.
was in Washington and San Francisco over the last couple of weeks, how would you pitch it?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's around the fact that are building a track record of fantastic startups in cyber. You've done it in creative tech. You're now doing it in AI. So you've got a track record of how can you grow and support these businesses as a tech hub. It's not London, it's not Silicon Valley. We all get that. But many investors that I meet are going to smaller tech hubs, one because they're not as costly. Talent in the San Francisco Bay Area is hugely expensive. So you've got that track record. And as you've pointed out, you've got great universities. You've got Queens, you've got Ulster, you've got the Center for Secure Information Technologies, was it CSIT, that has a great reputation. You've got very good local leadership, both from business and from government. And then the other point that I make is, we've talked about the ties across the UK, good ties into Ireland, and also a good level of engagement with the US. I know you and Mary have both been spending a lot of time in the US. There's a lot of investment from the US that's coming into Northern Ireland. Those components for me are how I would pitch Northern Ireland and say, look, we're here. This is what we're doing. It's not the expense of London or Silicon Valley or Shanghai, and we can do just as well here. Thank you very much.
Well, that's the hope. That's the hope for us.
Well, it's the hope, but make it the reality. Make it the plan. You've got a good story to tell. It's also that confidence in showing and explaining that story that will get people to sit up and take notice. After my visit, I came back and I told so many people about, what I saw in Northern Ireland and how I was impressed with what's on the ground there. So let's amplify that message and show a high degree of confidence. Don't get arrogant, but confidence that what you're building is exactly where the future's going and you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah, and there's huge investment going into AI infrastructure across the
Mm.
UK. How do you see startups and SMEs in Northern Ireland plugging into that instead of feeling like it's all happening somewhere else, like your London, your Shanghai, in the US?
Yeah, I think it's important that you show up when you're hearing about these investment opportunities, when government leaders are coming there, put them in a tough space and say, look, all of this money is going in. We'd like some of that from Northern Ireland, but also come to London, come to other parts of the UK and say, look, this is what we're doing, this is what we're building, and we want to get access to that. We want to meet these big players and showcase what's going on in Derry, what's going on in Belfast to make sure that they have that understanding that that is an option for them. I always say, look, if you don't go, you don't know. And so make sure you go and meet these folks when these events are happening. And sometimes, it's that classic story, Claire, those who shout loudest get results. And I'm going to reference the AI growth zones that are being set up in Wales, both in North Wales and in South Wales. They've got the government investing in AI growth zones. How do we get Northern Ireland into that mix, and really make sure that that's part of it? And, I know the folks in Wales, they've done a great job, but they've been shouting about this. They're saying, look, this is what we're doing here. This is what we're building. We'd like some of that, please. And that also comes back to their local leaders engaging with UK government on these matters. But amplify what's happening on the ground, showcase what you're doing. I think that's really, really key here.
Yeah, I'm delighted also, Russ. I know that you're in Birmingham today
Mm,
at uh, the AI conference, and hopefully that you will be able to amplify what we're doing
I will.
on the ground here in Northern Ireland.
I
But
will.
just moving it back into practical terms, because our audience today is very much kind of an SME audience. And then, really most of the SMEs that we talk to are saying AI sounds great, but I don't know where to start. So for a typical Northern Ireland business, what's step one or step
Mm.
two? So you've talked before about sorting your data, picking a couple of pain points and using tools like Gemini and Copilot.
Yeah.
what is your advice there?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'd wrap it around, how do I get my business to be AI ready? And that starts a bit with, what's the strategy and where can AI add the most value to my business? And that will also come from conversations that you're having there in Derry in terms of, how do you think about this from a value creation point of view? And then it's about kind of what are the building blocks? So identify the data sources that you have in your company, what's being collected, who has access to that data. How do you make sure that the data is being standardized and that it's being cleaned? Eliminate those duplicate records, fix the errors. Ensure your customer data is up to date. Every time I send out a Global Tech Advocates newsletter, the day after is a little bit painful, but I'm cleaning and scrubbing my database in terms of what bounced, who's moved, etc. It's a basic task, but it's really important. And then you need to think about how do you start to centralize that data once you've got your arms around it. There are organizations like Snowflake that are data warehouses. Do you need to reach out to those types of organizations? How do you put data governance in place? Who's got access? Who's got ownership? Are you being compliant with GDPR? And then once that's done, how do you kind of keep the data quality high? Once you've cleaned it, once you've scrubbed it, keep it in a good place. And so for me, the organization thinks about how do you move away from the negativity about, oh, AI is going to do your job for you, to AI takes away the boring bits so that you could really focus on the high value work. So for me, that's the value that you need to create. But a lot of these steps I've just described are some of the basics that you have to put in place.
Yeah, and taking those basics and the things that you discussed in terms of GDPR, so people are genuinely worried about security, ethics, all the scary headlines that we're hearing about. How do you suggest that small businesses keep things safe and responsible without getting frozen by fear?
Yeah.
That I can't do AI because all of this, and I'm just going to park it.
Yeah, no, it's good. And look, I like saying, look, it's not that difficult. There are practical steps that we all need to be taking. It's about, verifying the identities before access is given. I think many of us know that. It's using strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. It sounds like a given, but we still have to remind people to do things like that. It's prioritizing software updates, making sure that your software is as up to date as possible. Do the data backups. Watch out for something called AI hallucinations as you're deploying AI, because sometimes AI can give you the wrong answers. So, this is where the human mindset is still key with AI. And then on that point, it's about the importance of having a human in the loop to verify the outputs. I mean, there might come a day when that may not be required, but for the foreseeable future, those are some of the things that I think we need to do. And I don't think they're rocket science, Claire. It's just, to me, good governance and good operational practice that you're putting in place.
And so you talk about kind of the simple steps and then thinking about the security. Can you give us like a concrete example, a small AI experiment a local business could try in the next 3 months that could help them save time and money and actually build that confidence piece of using
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I think maybe an example to give is, can you potentially implement an AI chatbot either on the company website, or maybe if you use something like Facebook Messenger, how do you initially, do the setup, do the training, select a chatbot builder, input the FAQs into text and integrate it with your website and start to really test and train the chatbot. Then do a live trial, see how that goes, see what the chat transcripts look like that are coming out of the chatbot. Does it make sense? Measure results, understand what's going on, track it, and then maybe, the next month is, how do you, if you're comfortable with all of that, how do you automate what's being done? How do you evaluate it? How do you evaluate the key KPIs? I mean, there are organizations that can help you to do that, but to me, that's just a simple way to kind of put your toe in the water if you haven't done anything to really understand how AI can work in practice with your company or organization that can help solve a problem for you.
Yeah, and that was the whole ethos of our Activate AI pilot that we're
Yeah.
showcasing here today. So once a business has played with these pilots, how do they get to the next level? It's nice to do a nice experiment, but how do you get to real business transformation then?
Yeah, that's a good point. So to me, it's a bit of a mentality that shifts, how do you move away from project mode to platform thinking and really start to build a scalable foundation? How do you start to embed AI into your core workflow processes and really think about it as core and not just this add-on? How do you focus on the governance to enable this to happen? and focus on ownership and accountability within your organization. Who's going to be the key leaders in your organization that are going to be driving AI into all that you do? And then with that is the cultural change piece. This is going to require organizations to think differently. And how do we make sure that employees are being trained and that this AI scaling is integral to all business operations? It will require a culture change and a cultural mindset shift so that people start to feel more and more comfortable with this, because I think so many organizations, their employees are coming at this from very different perspectives. So you've got to take them on that journey with you.
And just as a follow up to that, we talk about skills a lot, and
Yeah.
there's so much free AI training around. How can you lift the whole team, not just have one techie who's the advocate, the person in the corner who's doing the AI? You know, is there any practical pieces that you could bring to that, or?
I think if you're a company, you've got 10 employees, I think they all should go on some type of AI training. You mentioned AICC. I think you've got Skill Up via Northern Ireland Direct. You've got the Northern Ireland Chamber, their AI Academy, the Tech First courses that I've mentioned. There are free courses out there, and I think for the development plan of every one of your employees, they should go on one of these courses, even if they're not going to be in the weeds on AI. Getting familiar with what AI can do, how do you operate in a culture that has AI embedded. I think everybody should go on that. And the good news is, and I think the UK government has done a good job, a lot of these courses are free and accessible for anyone to participate.
Yeah, because it is an AI revolution. It's coming into every form of life.
Yep,
So it's kind of one of those. I always say it's like the mobile phone. 25 years ago, people didn't want to didn't think that they would be using a mobile phone, and now we use it day and daily, kind of for
exactly,
nearly every task.
exactly.
So as we kick off the Advocate or the Activate AI showcase today, what's your message to Northern Ireland SMEs about how we not only keep up but actually get ahead in this AI wave or revolution?
Yeah, a really good question. I think just a few thoughts on that. One is, just a few questions kind of that you should be thinking about. Are you making AI a way of life in your company? Is it getting embedded into your workflows? I mean, it sounds pretty basic, but a lot of companies are not doing that, I think, the way they should be. And are the right people in your organization leading that process? How do people at the top of these organizations really signal that AI is critical for the future of the company? And then how do you celebrate excellent use of AI? Who in your organization is doing a good job with this? Did it benefit a team? Did it benefit a product build? And to demonstrate how you're using it effectively. I mean, those are some of the things I think can start to really keep you ahead of the curve as you embrace it.
Yeah, and just really as a way to kind of finish off in our conversation, because we could talk about this all day and you've got so much expertise. What's the one thing that you'd love every business owner watching this and here with us today to do in the next week to get started with AI? So keep it practical.
Go back and start asking questions in your organization. What is the company doing? What is it not doing? Is the company's database ready for AI? Coming back to what we talked about earlier. Who's using AI in the company and who's not using AI in the company? And, just to get a solid understanding about what's already happening so that that becomes your starting point in terms of how you start to embrace AI more actively.
Brilliant, Russ. Thank you so much for your
Pleasure.
time today. I hope that the conference goes well and that you're really advocating for Northern Ireland when you're in the front row seats
I
over
will.
there in Birmingham. And maybe what we'll do is, as a follow-on from this and all the learning that you learned in Birmingham, we could maybe have another follow-up at some
I'd love
stage in
to.
the near future.
And I'd love to do that in person, please. I'll come
Yeah.
visit, I promise.
Perfect. And for anyone here in the audience today, remember we're part of Ross's global community, the Global Tech Advocates. There's Tech Advocates Northern Ireland. So if you want to get involved more and be more in touch, Ross keeps his finger on the pulse and keeps the Global Tech Advocates informed of everything that's happening in the technology world across the world. And we are delighted that he took the time to be with us today. So Ross, again, thank you from everyone here
Thank you.
and safe travels. See you later.
Thank you.